The year was 1520. The Ottoman Empire stood at the height of its glory vast, untamed and ruled by a man whose name alone commanded fear across continents. Suleiman the Magnificent. She had come from the cold plains of Ruthenia, torn from her family during a Tatar raid. Her Christian name was Alexandra, but the palace renamed her Hurrem, meaning the joyful one. Her laughter echoed through the harem's corridors, a rare sound in a world built on silence and obedience. The other women whispered about her. Some envied her spirit. Others thought her mad. But beneath her warm smile, Hurrem possessed something dangerous, an unyielding mind and a vision sharper than any blade. When she first met Suleiman, he was unlike any man she had known. The Sultan feared by armies, adored by poets, saw in her something he could not define. She didn't tremble when he looked at her. She spoke with wit, challenged him with questions, and laughed at moments when others would fall to their knees. At first, she was a curiosity. Then she became an obsession. And soon, she became the center of his world. The women of the harem saw it coming like a storm. Mahidevran Sultan, Suleiman's chief consort, and the mother of his eldest son, Mustafa, burned with jealousy. Hurrem's rise was an insult to centuries of Ottoman tradition. Concubines were not supposed to rule hearts, let alone empires. But Hurrem was no ordinary concubine. She understood that love alone could not secure her fate. The palace was a labyrinth of spies, whispers, and silent wars. To survive, she had to master the art of politics, and she did. Step by step, she reshaped the invisible hierarchies of Topkapi. She learned the languages of the court, charmed viziers, and befriended even the powerful Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha. She studied statecraft, religion, and the delicate dance between power and mercy. She bore Suleiman children, 5 sons and a daughter. With each birth, her influence grew. But more children meant more danger, for succession in the Ottoman world was not a matter of birthright, it was a matter of survival. In the silence of the harem, mothers became rivals. Brothers were born as future enemies. Hurrem saw this truth clearly. If she did not secure her place and her sons' futures, she would one day lose everything. Her strategy was unlike anything the empire had ever seen. Traditionally, concubines who bore the sultan's sons were sent away to provincial palaces. Hurrem refused to go. She convinced Suleiman to break the ancient law to allow her to remain beside him in the palace. Then, she did the unthinkable. For the first time in Ottoman history, a concubine became a wife. The empire gasped in disbelief. Hurrem Sultan, once a slave, was now the legal wife of the sultan, crowned not with jewels but with authority. This single act shattered centuries of royal custom and marked the beginning of a new era, the Sultanate of women. From that moment on, she was no longer just a favorite. She became the sultan's closest advisor, his confidant, and his equal in intellect. She drafted letters to foreign rulers, negotiated alliances, and influenced decisions of war and peace. But with power came enemies. Ibrahim Pasha, the Grand Vizier, once a dear friend, began to see her growing influence as a threat. Hurrem, ever perceptive, sensed his ambitions stretching beyond loyalty. She whispered her concerns to Suleiman not as accusations but as questions. Can a servant love his master more than power itself? Doubt began to take root. Ibrahim's arrogance and wealth became unbearable even to the sultan. Soon after, his lifeless body was found in the palace, executed by imperial decree. To some, it was justice. To others, it was Hurrem's first true strike. After Ibrahim's fall, she moved carefully, consolidating her influence. She transformed the harem into a hub of political intelligence. Through letters sent across Europe and the East, she built a web of connections that stretched from Venice to Persia. Foreign ambassadors began to recognize her authority, addressing her with titles reserved for rulers. But inside the empire, a darker conflict brewed: the question of succession. Suleiman's eldest son, Mustafa, was strong, popular, and a warrior by nature. The Janissaries adored him. The court expected him to inherit the throne. Yet Hurrem's sons had claims too. The empire could not have multiple heirs. Only one would live to rule. The others would face the bowstring. Hurrem knew what awaited her children if Mustafa lived. She also knew Suleiman's heart, a man torn between love for her and duty to the empire. So she planted her seeds of influence not through commands, but through persuasion. She wrote letters with trembling ink, sharing stories of betrayal and whispering of rebellion. She painted Mustafa not as a loyal son, but as a potential usurper, the kind of ruler who might destroy his father's empire to claim it early. Whether her fears were truth or strategy, no one could say. But one day, during the campaign in Persia, the order was given. Prince Mustafa was executed. The soldiers wept. The empire fell silent. The legend of the sultan who killed his own son began. Hurrem's triumph was also her tragedy. The eyes that once looked upon her with warmth now reflected guilt and distance. The man she had loved, changed forever by the act, withdrew deeper into his solitude. Yet the empire did not crumble. It endured, reshaped by her invisible hand. From her chambers, Hurrem continued to rule in silence. She built charitable foundations, mosques and schools, from Jerusalem to Mecca. The Christian world called her Roxelana, the sorceress who bewitched a sultan. The Ottomans called her Haseki Sultan, the woman who redefined an empire. Years passed. Her children grew, her body weakened, but her influence remained unbroken. Even as illness crept into her bones, she continued to send letters to the Sultan on his campaigns, her words filled with both tenderness and command. And when death finally came for her in 1558, it came not as an end, but as an echo. Suleiman wept the man who ruled the greatest empire on earth, mourning the one person who had truly ruled his heart. He ordered her to be buried beside him, another act unheard of in Ottoman tradition. When he too died years later, their tombs stood side by side in the Suleimani Mosque, overlooking the city that had been both their throne and their battlefield. But her story did not end there. Hurrem Sultan's legacy transformed the very foundation of the Ottoman Empire. After her, women would no longer remain silent within the harem's walls. For over a century, the empire entered the Sultanate of women, an era where royal mothers, wives and daughters became the hidden rulers of the world's greatest dynasty. Her son Selim too became sultan. Her architectural visions still stand today: domes that pierce the Istanbul sky, fountains that whisper her name. Hurrem Sultan had begun as a captive, but she died a queen. More than that, she became a symbol of transformation. She proved that even within a world built by men, a woman could not only survive but change the course of an empire. Some said she used deceit, others said she used love. But in truth, she used both, creating a balance no ruler before her had achieved. She humanized the sultan and gave the empire a conscience. Long after her death, her enemies still whispered her name in bitterness, and her admirers in awe. Hurrem Sultan, the slave who rose to queenhood, the woman who bent destiny, the fire that burned through the cold stones of empire. Her life became legend, her legend became history, and her history became a mirror, reflecting what one mind, one heart, and one woman could do when she dared to rewrite fate itself. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from history. We'll see you in the next one.